Despite the U.S. achieving its biggest corn harvest in history, farmers in the Midwest are facing bankruptcy. What's going wrong? The answer lies in a trade war few are paying attention to. With corn prices plummeting, record agricultural trade deficits, and exports disappearing, Canada's role in this crisis is more significant than many realize. In this video, Richard Wolff, expert economist, breaks down the trade war's effects on U.S. agriculture, particularly corn, and what American farmers can do to survive. Leave a 1 in the comments if you agree with Richard Wolff's take, or a 0 if you disagree. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel for more insightful content. The United States is a country with a strong agricultural industry, especially in corn production. However, there is an ongoing paradox. While the U.S. has harvested a record corn crop, farmers in the Midwest are facing bankruptcy. This seems like a hard-to-explain contradiction, as corn production is at an all-time high, yet farmers are unable to make a profit. In reality, the main cause is not just about yield, but also relates to complex macroeconomic factors that the agricultural sector is currently grappling with. This year, corn prices have dropped to the lowest levels in 5 years, making it impossible for farmers to sell their corn at prices that would cover production costs. This has led to a financial crisis for millions of American farmers, particularly in the Midwest, where corn production is a significant part of the agricultural economy. The situation has become even more severe as the U.S. faces, for the first time in decades, a record agricultural trade deficit of $49.5 billion. This is a clear sign that the U.S. agricultural sector is encountering unprecedented challenges, not just in terms of yield, but also with regard to exports and input costs. This issue not only affects farmers but also impacts the broader economy, as the agricultural industry plays a crucial role in providing food and creating jobs for millions of Americans. The situation where a bumper crop fails to bring economic benefits to farmers is a serious problem that requires timely solutions and policies to protect the agricultural sector and stabilize the economy. This is the paradox that the U.S. agricultural sector is currently facing. The United States, with its strength in agricultural production, especially corn, frequently records bumper crops. However, this year, when corn was harvested in record amounts, farmers are facing bankruptcy and losses. This seems inexplicable, as high agricultural yields have not improved the financial situation of farmers. The cause is not simply about yield, but also involves a range of complex macroeconomic issues. Although corn production has grown substantially, the price of corn has dropped to its lowest level in 5 years, making it impossible for farmers to make a profit from selling their crops. They are forced to sell corn at prices below production costs, leading to financial losses and a crisis. This issue is not confined to corn alone, but is also linked to the disappearance of traditional export markets and the breakdown of important trade agreements. As international competitors, especially Canada and Brazil, increase their production and dominate export markets, U.S. agricultural products are losing access to major consumer markets. At the same time, partner countries like China have stopped purchasing corn and soybeans from the U.S., leading to canceled export contracts. Moreover, U.S. government trade policies and tariffs over the years have exacerbated the situation. Trade wars, especially with countries like China and Mexico, have significantly altered the structure of the export market. When trade agreements are broken or become ineffective, U.S. agricultural products can no longer access international markets at reasonable prices. This forces domestic farmers to face enormous financial pressure and makes it unsustainable to continue production. In summary, while the U.S. has had a bumper crop, it is the loss of markets, the breakdown of trade agreements, and unreasonable prices that are causing farmers to struggle. This serves as a major lesson about the dependence on export markets and the need to maintain stable trade agreements to protect the interests of U.S. agriculture. While many people might think that failure in agriculture is due to natural disasters or bad weather, the reality proves the opposite. Corn in the U.S. was not destroyed by violent storms, prolonged droughts, or other natural phenomena. Instead, this collapse is the result of human decisions. This is a painful truth, as political factors, international power struggles, and changes in global consumer preferences and demands have severely impacted American agriculture. These factors have not only reduced the value of agricultural products, but have also distorted export markets, making it difficult for farmers to sell their products at reasonable prices. One of the biggest factors leading to the decline in agriculture is the political decisions made by the U.S. government. Protectionist trade policies, trade wars, and high tariffs have disrupted important trade agreements that the U.S. has maintained for decades. For a long time, these agreements helped the U.S. maintain its leading position in global agricultural exports. However, when trade policies suddenly changed, the U.S. lost key consumer markets and was unable to compete with other countries in exporting corn, soybeans, and other agricultural products. In addition to domestic political decisions, the international power struggle is another crucial factor. Countries like China, Brazil, and Canada have increased their production and export of corn, wheat, and soybeans, directly competing with the U.S. The changing trade strategies of these countries have affected the global market, causing American farmers to lose important export markets. This became even more evident when China, a major corn consumer for the U.S., stopped purchasing corn and soybeans from the U.S. as part of trade retaliation measures. This caused a significant drop in export revenue, worsening the financial situation for farmers. The shifting trade relationships between countries have made the global market unstable and directly impacted commodity prices. Finally, the change in global consumer preferences and demands also played a vital role in the collapse of U.S. agriculture. Countries that traditionally consumed U.S. corn and soybeans have started to look for cheaper and more accessible alternatives from countries like Brazil and Argentina. This not only led to the loss of markets, but also subjected American agricultural products to fierce price competition. Changing consumer trends, such as the rise of protein alternatives or other agricultural products, have reduced the demand for traditional corn. The decisions made by global consumers, along with changes in trade policies and increased competition, have led to this situation, making it difficult for American farmers to maintain profitability as before. The collapse of American agriculture is not the result of natural disasters or changing weather conditions. Instead, it is the outcome of poor political decisions, international power struggles, and shifts in global consumer preferences. These factors have created a major shock to the U.S. agricultural market, reducing the competitiveness of agricultural products and causing difficulties for farmers. Without timely adjustments to policies and export strategies, U.S. agriculture may continue to face even greater challenges in the future. Although the U.S. has recorded a bumper corn crop this year, farmers are facing severe financial difficulties. This paradox mainly arises from two major factors: the drop in corn prices and the rising input costs. This combination has made it difficult for farmers to make a profit from a bumper harvest, despite strong growth in production. Throughout this year, corn prices have fallen to their lowest level in 5 years, causing significant damage to farmers. Corn, a staple crop in the U.S., contributes a significant portion to the income of millions of farmers across the country. However, with the sharp drop in corn prices, farmers cannot sell their products at prices high enough to cover production costs. They face a harsh reality: a bumper crop, but no way to break even. The price drop is the result of several factors, including changes in global supply and increased competition from other exporting countries. Despite the record-high corn production, the decrease in corn prices has reduced farmers' profits, making it impossible to cover production costs. This is one of the main reasons why many farmers are saddled with large debts and seeking urgent financial solutions. Along with the drop in corn prices, input costs have skyrocketed. Factors such as fertilizer, seed, fuel, and equipment costs have increased sharply in recent years, driving farmers into debt. Fertilizer, a crucial element in maintaining crop yields, has seen significant price increases due to supply shortages and rising transportation costs. Fuel prices have also become a major factor, with oil and other energy costs continuously rising. Moreover, the cost of seeds and farming equipment has also increased significantly, causing farmers' input costs to rise further. Despite a bumper harvest, the low prices and high costs make it impossible for farmers to sustain profitability. This rising cost has created a vicious cycle, preventing them from escaping their financial troubles. Many farmers have been forced to borrow money or even sell assets to keep their operations going. As a result, American farmers are currently facing a financial nightmare despite their bumper harvest. The mounting financial pressure means they are not only dealing with reduced incomes, but are also searching for ways to survive in the industry. Many farmers are struggling not only with debt repayment, but also with a lack of capital to reinvest in the next season's crop, which threatens the stability and future growth of U.S. agriculture. Furthermore, this situation is also affecting farmers' ability to access bank loans, as many cannot prove their ability to repay loans or generate future profits. This further plunges them into a resource deficit, preventing them from maintaining effective farming operations. Despite the bumper crop, U.S. farmers are facing a financial nightmare due to the combination of falling corn prices and rising input costs. The government and financial institutions need to intervene quickly by providing financial support, facilitating access to low-interest loans, and reducing input costs to help U.S. agriculture weather this difficult period. Without timely assistance, many farmers may not be able to continue production, leading to severe impacts on the economy and national food security. While U.S. agriculture continues to see strong production, especially in bumper corn harvests, farmers are facing an unprecedented financial and emotional crisis. This situation goes beyond just financial concerns and delves into the deeper issue of farmers questioning the purpose and future of their profession, particularly as external factors like banking policies and market changes push them to the brink of despair. With falling corn prices and rising input costs, many farmers are beginning to question the purpose of continuing to farm. They no longer see sustainability in agriculture when the profits from bumper crops are insufficient to cover production costs. Despite harvesting corn in record amounts, farmers cannot escape mounting debt and financial imbalance. This leaves them feeling as though their efforts are in vain, and many are starting to doubt the future of agriculture. These questions are not just about financial matters. They also affect the everyday lives of farming families. When they are unable to sustain production and see no support from the government or financial institutions, continuing in farming becomes increasingly difficult. They no longer feel confident about a stable future, and doubts about the purpose of farming are growing. One factor that exacerbates farmers' struggles is the tightening of credit by banks and financial institutions. After a series of financial crises and declining profits in agriculture, banks have become more cautious in extending credit to farmers. This has made it difficult for many farming families to access the financial resources necessary to sustain production. Without the ability to borrow money for fertilizer, seeds, or farming equipment, they are unable to reinvest in the next season's crops, facing the risk of halting production altogether. The tightening of credit not only affects large-scale farmers, but also severely impacts small farmers and rural families. When financial resources are cut off, they can no longer maintain their livelihoods and have no alternative options to sustain their family economies. This difficult credit policy has pushed farmers into a desperate situation as they struggle to repay debts or find ways to continue living. The disappointment among farmers is spreading as their hopes gradually fade. Many families are now facing the risk of losing their land, something no one ever imagined when they started with vast cornfields and dreams of stability. Farmers are witnessing their small towns become quieter as families begin to leave farming, seeking work in larger cities or transitioning to other industries. These villages and rural towns, once bustling with hardworking people and expansive cornfields, are now growing desolate and lifeless. This situation not only affects the local economy, but also impacts the spiritual well-being of the community. The towns where these farmers live have seen significant decline, with traditional farming families no longer able to maintain their livelihoods. This reflects the painful loss and the diminishing hope of those who have dedicated their entire lives to farming. The disappointment in rural communities is the result of several factors accumulating over time. When farmers no longer see value in their work, cannot access credit, and face the threat of losing their land, they feel abandoned and lose faith in the future. The quieting of small towns is a clear testament to the decay of rural communities, as farmers' last hopes slowly fade away. To reverse this trend, Strong intervention from the government, banks, and financial institutions is needed to provide farmers with access to financial support, sustain production, and stabilize their lives. In an ever-changing global market, U.S. agriculture has faced a major shock as corn export revenues suddenly plummeted, causing billions of dollars in exports to vanish overnight. This is not only a problem for farmers, but also a serious issue for the national economy, as corn exports have long played a crucial role in maintaining financial stability and driving growth. The U.S. corn export industry, which has consistently been a global leader in both production and value, has recently witnessed a dramatic decline in export revenues. This has caused a financial shock for farmers and raised concerns about the stability of the U.S. agricultural economy. Billions of dollars in export revenue have disappeared suddenly, and in recent months, U.S. corn exports have dropped to their lowest levels of the year. This decline directly impacts farmers' profits and businesses involved in the processing and consumption of corn. One of the key reasons for this drop in export revenues is the change in global demand for corn. Countries that have traditionally relied on the U.S. as a primary supplier have started looking for alternative suppliers from countries like Brazil and Argentina, where prices and production costs are lower. As these countries increase production and enhance their competitiveness on the international market, U.S. corn is no longer as sought after as before. The sharp decline in U.S. corn exports is a shock not only for farmers, but also for the entire agricultural industry. The U.S. has long been the leading country in corn exports, and losing this major market has pushed many farmers into financial crisis. Many farmers are unable to sell their corn at high prices and are forced to lower their prices to compete with other exporting nations. But even then, they still cannot achieve profits that cover production costs. The decline in corn exports also has wide-reaching effects on related industries, such as food processing, animal feed production, and other sectors that rely on a stable supply of corn from the U.S. corn processing plants, which once operated steadily and profitably, are now faced with surplus corn while the consumption market cannot absorb it. This reduces plant operating capacity and leads to a decrease in jobs in production areas. There are several factors contributing to the collapse of U.S. corn exports. One of the key factors is the shift in international trade agreements. Protectionist trade policies, trade wars, and new trade agreements have disrupted traditional trade relationships between the U.S. and major importing countries. Countries like China, one of the largest consumers of U.S. corn, have stopped purchasing U.S. corn due to trade tensions, causing farmers to lose an important market. Additionally, other corn exporting countries, particularly Brazil and Argentina, have increased their production and improved product quality to directly compete with U.S. corn on the international market. This has altered the global corn supply structure, reducing the U.S.'s market share and driving down U.S. corn prices. The collapse of U.S. corn exports is a major shock for the agricultural sector and the U.S. economy. As international markets change and trade agreements break down, U.S. farmers are not only losing key export markets, but also facing a dramatic drop in corn prices. To restore stability in the agricultural sector, the U.S. needs to find ways to enhance its competitiveness in international markets, maintain and sign sustainable trade agreements, and support farmers to cope with global market fluctuations. Seize the opportunity to boost its own corn exports, filling the markets that the U.S. has lost. This increase has not only brought significant benefits to Canada's agricultural economy, but also marks a turning point in the global corn trade balance. These changes have shifted how countries consume corn, and Canada has emerged as a strong competitor to the U.S. in the corn export industry. In recent years, Canada has ramped up its corn production and exports, especially after traditional markets for U.S. corn began seeking alternative suppliers. Canada's corn production has surged thanks to the adoption of more efficient farming methods and investments in modern agricultural technology. Canada has not only maintained stability in production, but has also improved the quality of its corn, making it more competitive on the international market. As the U.S. faces a decline in exports, mainly due to trade wars and increased competition from other countries, Canada has swiftly filled the gap. Canada's corn exports have doubled in a short time, particularly to major markets like China, Mexico, and several European countries. With flexible agricultural policies and stable international trade agreements, Canada has captured the markets that the U.S. once dominated. Countries that once relied on U.S. corn are now turning to Canada. This is not only a major shift in the global corn supply structure, but also a testament to Canada's adaptability and ability to respond to changes in the global economy. Corn importing nations have started seeking alternative sources, and Canada has been able to meet this demand due to its stable product quality and competitive pricing. A key factor driving countries to purchase corn from Canada is the trust in the country's trade agreements and export policies. While the U.S. is facing trade barriers and protectionist policies, Canada has maintained stable trade relationships, particularly with large consuming nations. This stability has allowed Canada to easily dominate markets that the U.S. has lost. Additionally, Canada's investments in infrastructure and logistics have played a crucial role in ensuring that Canadian corn can be quickly and efficiently shipped to international markets. Along with improved product quality, Canadian corn is not only meeting the needs of exporting countries, but also influencing consumption patterns in many of the U.S.'s traditional markets. The rise of Canada's corn exports is a clear example of the shifting global corn market. As the U.S. struggles to maintain its corn export markets, Canada has swiftly seized the opportunity and filled the void. Increased production, improved quality, and the maintenance of stable trade relationships have made Canada a formidable competitor in the global corn export industry. To reclaim its position, the U.S. will need to rethink its trade strategies and invest in agricultural technology to continue competing on the international stage. The U.S. is facing a critical situation as its agricultural trade deficit reaches record levels, with forecasts predicting a deficit of $49.5 billion by 2025. This marks the first time in history that U.S. agriculture has failed to maintain a strong trade surplus, particularly with its flagship product, corn. This decline not only impacts the agricultural sector but also disrupts the macroeconomic factors of the country, creating widespread negative effects throughout the economy. U.S. agriculture has long been one of the major sources of national revenue, contributing significantly to the trade balance. However, in recent years, the agricultural trade deficit has surged due to a decline in corn exports and other key agricultural products. Once the world's leading agricultural exporter, the U.S. now faces an opposing scenario, losing traditional export markets and struggling to maintain its dominant position in supplying corn to major consumer countries. The forecasted agricultural trade deficit of $49.5 billion in 2025 represents a significant setback for the industry. This shift largely stems from the U.S.'s inability to compete with other corn-exporting nations like Canada, Brazil, and Argentina, who have quickly filled the void left by the U.S. in international markets. One of the primary causes of the agricultural trade deficit is the U.S.'s inability to export corn, a cornerstone of the agricultural industry. Corn has long been the most important crop in U.S. agriculture, serving as a major domestic food source as well as a primary export product, particularly to markets in Asia and Europe. However, the decline in corn exports has created a severe imbalance in the U.S. agricultural economy. With the inability to export corn in large quantities and at high prices as it once did, not only farmers but the entire U.S. agricultural sector faces a major shock. The food processing industry, animal feed production, and businesses serving farmers have all been hit hard. The drop in export revenue has led to reduced profits for many companies and created a stagnation in rural development, as millions of agricultural workers and businesses are affected. The agricultural trade deficit does not only directly impact the agricultural sector, but also has far-reaching consequences for the broader U.S. economy. When the U.S. can no longer export corn and other agricultural products, it not only affects farmers' incomes but also the country's overall trade balance. This results in the U.S. having to import a large volume of agricultural products from other countries, placing pressure on the national budget and increasing the overall trade deficit. On the other hand, the decline in agricultural exports has caused a wave of recession in rural areas, where agriculture is the primary industry. Small towns, once centered around agriculture, now face economic decline as farming families can no longer afford to spend or continue production. This directly impacts local services such as healthcare, education, and other public services. Moreover, The downturn in agriculture has affected related industries such as food processing, trucking, and logistics, leading to job losses and increasing unemployment rates in these regions. Major food processing companies, which once relied on the steady supply of corn and other U.S. agricultural products, are now forced to source their raw materials from other countries, changing global supply chains and raising costs for U.S. businesses. The record agricultural trade deficit in the U.S. is not just an alarming economic indicator, but also a sign of a dramatic shift in the country's economic structure. The loss of the ability to export corn, the flagship product of U.S. agriculture, has led to severe imbalances not only in the agricultural economy, but also throughout the broader U.S. economy. To restore stability and sustainable growth in agriculture, the U.S. must adjust its trade policies, invest in agricultural technology, and find new solutions to maintain its position in the international market. The global trade war in recent years has had profound effects on the U.S. economy, particularly in the agricultural sector. China and neighboring countries, through their political and trade decisions, have reshaped the global trade landscape, pushing the U.S. into an unprecedented difficult situation. These changes not only affect traditional export markets, but also weaken the U.S.'s position in the corn export industry, its flagship agricultural product. China, one of the U.S.'s largest trading partners, made significant moves by halting its purchases of U.S. corn and soybeans. This was a major decision amidst the ongoing trade war between the two nations. China imposed high tariffs on U.S. agricultural products, particularly corn and soybeans, as retaliation for U.S. trade policies. The halting of corn and soybean imports from the U.S. was not only a shock to American farmers, but also caused significant losses to the national agricultural economy. China had previously been one of the largest markets for U.S. corn and soybeans, with billions of dollars in exports each year. However, as China began seeking alternative suppliers from countries like Brazil and Argentina, the U.S. lost an important customer, causing a sharp decline in the U.S. corn export industry. This situation not only impacts farmers, but also has deep effects on food processing industries and animal feed production, as these products are no longer being consumed in large quantities in China. This causes a disruption in global supply chains and raises costs for U.S. businesses. In addition to China, Mexico, another major market for U.S. corn, has also taken political actions that have reduced corn exports to the country. Mexico has strongly opposed genetically modified GM corn, the type of corn that is widely produced in the U.S. The Mexican government has implemented stringent regulations on GM corn imports, requiring that all corn imported must not contain genetically modified components or must undergo more rigorous safety testing processes. Although U.S. GM corn has been widely accepted domestically and in many other countries, Mexico has taken a different stance and imposed technical barriers that have significantly reduced U.S. corn exports. This decision has hurt American farmers, especially those who rely on exporting corn to Mexico, where U.S. corn has had a dominant market share for many years. Mexico's opposition to GM corn is a prime example of how trade protection policies and differences in political views can reshape agricultural export dynamics. This not only reduces the competitiveness of U.S. corn, but also causes instability in global agricultural supply chains. The trade war and political moves by China and Mexico have created a major shock for the U.S. agricultural economy. Changes in trade policies by these countries have not only caused the U.S. to lose key markets, but have also weakened the competitiveness of U.S. agricultural products on the international market. This increases instability in the economy, as farmers and businesses are no longer able to predict the factors influencing exports and product consumption. This situation highlights a significant issue: the dependence on export markets and international trade policies. The U.S., with its strong agricultural sector, has faced great difficulty as traditional consumer markets change or implement protectionist policies, making the agricultural economy less sustainable than before. The trade war and political decisions by China and Mexico have altered the global trade landscape, pushing the U.S. into a difficult position. The halting of corn and soybean imports from China, along with Mexico's opposition to GM corn, has caused U.S. corn exports to plummet, weakening the national agricultural economy. To restore stability and sustainable growth in agriculture, the U.S. needs flexible trade strategies, protection of international agreements, and the search for new export markets to maintain its position in the global agricultural industry. While the U.S. faces a decline in agricultural exports, especially corn, Canada has quickly seized the opportunity to increase its corn exports, filling the gap left by the U.S. in international markets. Notably, this growth has not only come from increased production, but also as a result of a quiet strategy Canada implemented, building strong trust from international markets through sustainable, stable corn products that are less affected by political fluctuations. Canada, through investment in modern farming technology and sustainable production methods, has rapidly become a formidable competitor in the global corn market. While the U.S. has been heavily impacted by trade protection policies and trade wars with major nations such as China and Mexico, Canada has ramped up its corn exports to key markets previously dominated by the U.S. Countries that once depended on U.S. corn have now turned to Canada. Canada not only provides a large quantity of corn, but also ensures that its products are of high quality, stable, and less influenced by political volatility. The stability of Canada's trade and agricultural policies has helped the country build strong trust from corn-consuming nations. A key factor in Canada's success in replacing the U.S. in international markets is its ability to supply corn of consistent quality while committing to environmental protection. Canada has focused on sustainable corn production, with strict standards for land conservation and fertilizer use, while ensuring that its corn is not overly impacted by environmental protection policies or fluctuations in trade wars. Moreover, Canada holds a significant advantage in maintaining stable trade relationships with international partners, not only in Asia but also in Europe. This allows Canada not only to maintain export contracts but also to expand into new markets, particularly countries with strict protectionist policies for imported agricultural products, such as Mexico and some European Union nations. Canada's growth in corn exports is not just a success story for the country, but also marks a significant shift in the global agricultural sector. The U.S. was once the largest corn supplier, commanding a significant share of international markets. However, changes in trade policies, increasing competition from other countries, and political instability have caused U.S. corn to lose its dominant position. Meanwhile, Canada, with its sustainable and stable strategy, has effectively capitalized on this opportunity to rise. The increase in Canadian corn exports is not just a shift in the global supply structure, but also reflects a long-term trend in the agricultural industry, with countries moving toward more sustainable and stable production. Canada's strong growth in corn exports, replacing the U.S. in many international markets, marks a significant shift in the global agricultural industry. With its quiet strategy focused on sustainable corn production and building trust from international markets, Canada has successfully capitalized on the decline of the U.S. to dominate the market. For the U.S., this serves as an important lesson about the need to maintain stable trade strategies and focus on improving product quality and sustainability in agricultural production to maintain its position in international markets. The crisis in U.S. agriculture is not just a financial issue, but has profound impacts on the mental health of farmers. Despite their significant contributions to the national economy, American farmers are now facing an unprecedented level of stress and psychological harm as they struggle with bankruptcy, loss of assets, and land. The heavy financial pressures, combined with difficulties in maintaining production and adapting to market shifts, have placed many farmers in a dire situation, threatened economically and emotionally. As corn prices plummet, input costs rise, and exports decline, many farmers in the U.S. are on the verge of bankruptcy. Unable to sustain production and pay off debts, thousands of farmers are drowning in mounting debt. Many families now face the risk of losing their land, a loss that is not just financial, but also a loss of years of hard work, time, and hope for future generations. Beyond financial losses, farmers are experiencing severe psychological impacts. The inability to provide a stable life for their families and the collapse of a lifetime's work has caused significant stress and anxiety. The sense of failure and helplessness in maintaining their businesses, combined with the pressure from debts and the loss of valuable assets, has driven many farmers into despair. The increase in calls to mental health hotlines in rural areas is a clear indicator of the mental stress within farming communities. Mental health services have reported a surge in calls, reflecting the reality that many farmers are suffering from severe psychological issues, such as anxiety, depression, and loneliness. Surveys and studies reveal that a large portion of farmers feel immense pressure from financial problems and the difficulty of maintaining their operations. These factors, combined with a lack of mental health services and healthcare in rural areas, have exacerbated the situation. This not only affects farmers' well-being, but also impacts their families and entire rural communities. Many farmers have expressed feeling abandoned by society, receiving no timely support from the government or financial institutions. This leaves them feeling hopeless, with no way out, while facing the collapse of the life's work they have spent decades building and maintaining. This financial and psychological crisis not only affects individual farmers, but also has wide-reaching effects on entire rural communities. Unresolved feelings of disappointment and mental stress can lead to a decline in quality of life, increase unemployment rates, and cause rural areas to become quieter and lifeless. When farmers cannot sustain production, small towns and rural communities face economic and social decline. Local businesses, public services, and infrastructure will suffer, creating a never-ending cycle of hardship. This not only impacts one generation, but also threatens the future of succeeding generations who may no longer have opportunities to grow in a healthy rural environment. The crisis of U.S. farmers is not just about financial losses, but also about psychological and mental health struggles. As farmers face bankruptcy, land loss, and a sense of failure, they are burdened with significant psychological stress. The surge in calls to mental health hotlines serves as a warning about the level of strain and mental harm the rural community is enduring. To support farmers through this crisis, timely intervention from government agencies, social organizations, and communities is essential. Financial support policies, along with a focus on mental health care, will be crucial in helping farmers recover and rebuild a more sustainable rural community for the future. While the U.S. faces a decline in agricultural exports, especially corn, Canada has quickly seized the opportunity to increase its corn exports, filling the gap left by the U.S. in international markets. Notably, this growth has not only come from increased production, but also as a result of a quiet strategy Canada implemented, building strong trust from international markets through sustainable, stable corn products that are less affected by political fluctuations. Canada, through investment in modern farming technology and sustainable production methods, has rapidly become a formidable competitor in the global corn market. While the U.S. has been heavily impacted by trade protection policies and trade wars with major nations such as China and Mexico, Canada has ramped up its corn exports to key markets previously dominated by the U.S. Countries that once depended on U.S. corn have now turned to Canada. Canada not only provides a large quantity of corn, but also ensures that its products are of high quality, stable, and less influenced by political volatility. The stability of Canada's trade and agricultural policies has helped the country build strong trust from corn-consuming nations. A key factor in Canada's success in replacing the U.S. in international markets is its ability to supply corn of consistent quality while committing to environmental protection. Canada has focused on sustainable corn production, with strict standards for land conservation and fertilizer use, while ensuring that its corn is not overly impacted by environmental protection policies or fluctuations in trade wars. Moreover, Canada holds a significant advantage in maintaining stable trade relationships with international partners, not only in Asia but also in Europe. This allows Canada not only to maintain export contracts but also to expand into new markets, particularly countries with strict protectionist policies for imported agricultural products, such as Mexico and some European Union nations. Canada's growth in corn exports is not just a success story for the country, but also marks a significant shift in the global agricultural sector. The U.S. was once the largest corn supplier, commanding a significant share of international markets. However, changes in trade policies, increasing competition from other countries, and political instability have caused U.S. corn to lose its dominant position. Meanwhile, Canada, with its sustainable and stable strategy, has effectively capitalized on this opportunity to rise. The increase in Canadian corn exports is not just a shift in the global supply structure, but also reflects a long-term trend in the agricultural industry, with countries moving toward more sustainable and stable production. Canada's strong growth in corn exports, replacing the U.S. in many international markets, marks a significant shift in the global agricultural industry. With its quiet strategy focused on sustainable corn production and building trust from international markets, Canada has successfully capitalized on the decline of the U.S. to dominate the market. For the U.S., this serves as an important lesson about the need to maintain stable trade strategies and focus on improving product quality and sustainability in agricultural production to maintain its position in international markets. As the U.S. agricultural sector faces a decline in exports, a record agricultural trade deficit, and increasing competition from other countries, the question arises: can the U.S. recover and reclaim its leadership position in agriculture? Or has that dominance been lost forever? Global trade is changing rapidly, with factors such as political volatility, trade wars, and shifts in global consumer demand pushing countries to adjust their strategies in order to maintain their standing. So, can the U.S. make a comeback, or is the future of its agricultural industry going to be a different story? The U.S. is not without the potential to reclaim its position in global agriculture. This position has been built on abundant agricultural output, vast land resources, and a modern production system. However, factors such as unstable trade policies, increased competition from other nations, and shifts in global demand have led to the gradual erosion of this dominance. To recover and regain its standing, the U.S. needs to change its agricultural strategy. Investing in modern agricultural technology and developing sustainable products could help the U.S. re-enter international markets with superior product quality and competitive pricing. Furthermore, maintaining stable trade relationships and securing beneficial trade agreements will be key in helping the U.S. preserve and regain its position in global agriculture. The current global trade environment is evolving rapidly. Trade wars, changes in trade policies, and rising competition from other countries have significantly diminished the U.S.'s export capabilities. In particular, in agriculture, competitors like Canada, Brazil, and China have quickly taken over markets the U.S. has lost, weakening America's position in the sector. The U.S. must face the reality that without changing its strategy, it will be very difficult to regain dominance in agriculture. The protectionist trade policies and tariff barriers the U.S. has applied in recent years may have weakened the competitiveness of U.S. agricultural products on the global market. Therefore, the U.S. needs to rethink its trade policies, ease tensions with partner countries, and create new trade agreements to expand its export markets. The global trade environment is currently volatile, and the recovery of the U.S. agricultural sector will not be easy. Factors such as political instability, trade wars, increasing competition from other nations, and shifting global consumer demand will create significant challenges for U.S. agriculture. However, recovery is not impossible. The U.S. has the potential for recovery thanks to internal factors like advanced technology, developed infrastructure, and an experienced agricultural workforce. If the government and policymakers can come up with the right solutions and strategies, the U.S. can still reclaim its position in agriculture. This will require investment in agricultural research and development, a shift toward more sustainable agricultural products, and efforts to seek new export markets while maintaining stable trade relationships with international partners. The future of the U.S. in global trade, particularly in agriculture, will depend on its ability to adapt to the changing trade environment and the strategies it chooses to recover and maintain its position. Although the U.S. faces numerous challenges, with proper investment in technology and flexible trade strategies, the U.S. can recover and reclaim its leadership position in global agriculture. However, this will require determination and timely action from both leadership and the farming community. The current state of U.S. agriculture is dire, and a significant shift in the global trade landscape is becoming more apparent. The U.S., once a powerhouse in agricultural exports, is now facing a collapse due to several factors such as the agricultural trade deficit, increasing competition from other nations, and changes in trade policies. This marks the end of a system that once defined global power in this sector, opening a new chapter in global trade as competitors like Canada, Brazil, and China quietly surpass the U.S. This story is not just about the U.S. economy, but also about a major change in global trade. U.S. agriculture was once a cornerstone of the world economy. But now other countries are quickly seizing the opportunity and dominating the markets that the U.S. has lost. This is a wake-up call for the U.S. about the need to change its trade strategy and invest in technology to maintain its competitiveness in international markets. These developments will not only affect farmers, but will also have far-reaching consequences for the entire global economy. We would love to hear your thoughts and views on the future of U.S. agriculture. Do you think the U.S. can recover and reclaim its leadership position in agricultural exports? Or has that dominance been lost forever? Share your opinions in the comments below and join the discussion on these important issues. What do you think needs to change for U.S. agriculture to be more competitive and thrive in today's volatile global trade environment? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow the next installment of this story to explore the major changes in global agriculture and their wide-reaching impacts on the U.S. economy.